The golden afternoon sun sparkled off rows of polished cars and white limousines parked outside Rosewood Estate, where the richest families gathered for the annual Millionaire's horse auction. Brochures printed on glossy paper fluttered like silver fish in the hands of guests as a warm breeze carried the scent of fresh hay and expensive perfume across the lawn. A brass quartet played cheerful music near the fountain, but their bright notes could not drown out the steady murmur of boastful chatter or the snap of camera shutters. The last bright note hung in the air like a question nobody wanted to answer, lingering over velvet chairs and silver ice buckets before fading into uncertain hush. Among the sea of tailored suits and shimmering gowns stood Cameron Reed, a lanky man in scuffed work boots and a denim jacket faded by years of sun and rain on backcountry trails. Every step he took left faint dust on the spotless marble path, and every dust speck seemed to make nearby millionaires lift their brows in silent accusation. Whispers followed him the way shadows follow light, carrying questions about how someone with a $10 bill could dare mingle with people who spent more on their glove buttons. Cameron felt heat crawl up his neck, yet he kept walking toward the registration booth, reminding himself to breathe slow and count the beats like he once did when calming nervous foals. He had traveled 2 days on borrowed bus tickets after hearing a rumor that an overlooked rescue mare would be auctioned last because no one believed she had value. The rumor gave him hope stronger than hunger, for he trusted the instinct that had guided him since childhood on a ranch where every creature, great or small, deserved a chance. Ahead, velvet ropes marked VIP lanes, and uniformed ushers checked invitations tucked inside envelopes embossed with gold leaf that shimmered in the sun like treasure maps. Even the smallest flicker of that metallic shimmer felt like a reminder that this field was paved with money rather than grass. Cameron waited in the general line, gripping paddle number 311, a flimsy piece of cardboard that looked out of place among the lacquer mahogany paddles held by heirs and heiresses. A teenager wearing a diamond-pinned cravat snickered and nudged her friend, pointing at Cameron's worn collar as though it were the day's most curious exhibit. The friend giggled, dropped her designer clutch, and claimed she was startled by the sudden smell of barnyards, making nearby listeners laugh so loudly the musicians lost their rhythm. Cameron straightened his shoulders, recalling his mother's words that a smile could disarm any cruelty faster than anger, so he tipped his hat politely before moving on. Behind him, a journalist muttered that the poor always wandered into rich event hoping for luck, and his photographer snapped a quick picture, framing Cameron as a novelty amid luxury. Cameron ignored the flash, focusing instead in the paddock set up to display the magnificent horses whose pedigrees read like royal family trees. Handlers dressed in crisp uniforms led a chestnut stallion past the crowd, and the animal's muscles rippled under its glossy coat, drawing admiring sighs and anticipatory whispers of record bids. Cameron's gaze, however, skipped over the champion and drifted toward a quiet corner where a single gray mare stood alone, her coat dull, her stance timid yet steady. A small tag dangled from her halter with the number 47, and Cameron memorized it the way a miner memorizes the gleam of hidden gold because something about her steady eyes felt extraordinary. He stepped closer, careful not to make sudden moves, and extended his hand. The mare sniffed his fingers and pressed her nose into his palm with gentle trust. For a heartbeat, the bustling world faded into silence, and Cameron heard only the quiet snore of an animal that seemed to ask for nothing more than kindness. An elderly stable hand noticed the moment and gave Cameron a respectful nod, saying softly that number 47 had heart but no pedigree, making her invisible to everyone chasing prestige. The words confirmed Cameron's belief that potential often hides behind unpolished exteriors, a lesson he learned fixing broken farm tools instead of buying new ones. Back in the main ring, bidding opened with thunderous applause as auctioneer Mr. Sterling banged his gavel, his sharp voice slicing through the murmur like a whip crack. His voice boomed with practiced power, bouncing off marble columns and making fragile glasses tremble on trays. Numbers flew higher and higher for the first horse, a gleaming bay colt. Cheers rose each time a new millionaire waved a paddle, hungry for trophies and bragging rights. Cameron stood at the edge, eyes following the scoreboard, but his mind stayed with the gray mare who waited alone, unaware of the fortunes dancing around her future. When the bay colt sold for a price larger than Cameron had ever seen on paper, some bidders cheered while others groaned, but all agreed it was only the beginning of the show. The sun slipped lower, painting the lawn in warm orange, and servants lit glass lanterns that glowed like captured fireflies along the pathways. Cameron wiped sweat from his brow, remembering he had no money for dinner, yet the ache in his stomach could not compete with the urgency in his chest. He replayed the mare's steady gaze in his mind, A gaze so calm it felt like a promise of unseen strength, waiting to be recognized by someone who looked with their heart instead of their wallet. Another round of laughter erupted behind him when a guest joked that the dusty stranger might try to buy the snack cart, and Cameron silently wished them well, for bitterness would waste precious focus. Bell chimes signaled the approaching half-hour mark, and organizers hurried to keep the schedule tight, fearing losing daylight before the grand finale of Champion Breeds. A loudspeaker crackled announcements about upcoming lots, and Cameron's ears perked when he heard number 47 would appear just before the intermission, a slot often ignored by restless crowds seeking refreshments. He clutched paddle 311 tighter, feeling edges press into his skin, a small sting that kept him grounded in the whirlwind of elite noises and shimmering lights. A toddler wearing miniature riding boots toddled past, pointing at Cameron's boots and asking why they looked real, making her nanny laugh nervously and guide her away. Cameron crouched to tie a loose lace, noticing small cracks near the toe and wondering if they would hold through one more season of work after today's gamble. Yet even as doubts nipped at him like persistent flies, he felt the old excitement that always came when a challenge dared him to rise beyond expectations. Somewhere beyond the auction yard, thunder rumbled faintly, but no clouds showed in the sky, and Cameron took it as a sign that unexpected things can rumble unseen before anyone's senses change. At last, a bell announced the next lot would soon be prepared, and Cameron's breath shortened, not from fear of ridicule, but from hope powerful enough to bend the day toward destiny. He wiped his palms on his jacket and whispered a thank you to every horse that ever taught him courage, ready to face laughter one last time because belief had already won inside his heart. The gavel slammed again, echoing over the hushed crowd, and Cameron stepped closer to the ring, certain that the most important story of the day was about to begin right where nobody expected it. A hush settled over the ring as the auctioneer's booming voice announced lot number 47, and Cameron felt every curious eye swing toward him like doors creaking open in a haunted hall. The gray mare stepped onto the soft sawdust with a shy flick of her tail, her coat still dull, but her ears pricked forward in quiet hope that almost glowed against the bright chandeliers. Bidding began at $100, a laughably low figure for this crowd, yet the price felt like a mountain to Cameron, whose wallet held just $200 and a bus ticket home. He raised paddle 311 with a steady hand, and snickers rippled through the rows of velvet seats, as though someone had told a secret joke about dreams knowing their proper place. The auctioneer rapped his gavel, called for 200, and a bored heiress waved a jeweled hand merely to amuse herself, pronouncing that she needed a garden ornament for her country estate. Cameron raised again to 300, spending his emergency food money without hesitation, for something inside him shouted that food could wait while destiny could not. The heiress lifted her brow, offered 400, and her friends exploded in airy laughter, enjoying the game of pushing the dusty stranger beyond his means. A tall man in a silver suit joined the tease with 500, bragging loudly that he once bought a pet puppy for more than a shabby farmer's entire life savings. Cameron inhaled, counted heartbeats, and lifted his paddle to 600, feeling the room tilt beneath the weight of disbelief because no one expected persistence from pockets they assumed were empty. At 700, the heiress's interest faded like perfume on a windy day, but the silver-suited man, Preston Monroe, leaned back, smirked, and announced 1,000 just to see Cameron flinch. Preston owned 3 racing stables and enjoyed crushing small hopes the way boys crush paper cups after finishing sweet soda, so the crowd turned to watch the spectacle more eagerly than the sale itself. Cameron scanned the mare's soft eyes, saw steady courage looking back, and realized fear could not live where trust already stood guard. He raised to 1,050, his last $50 sliding away like coins tossed into a deep well, yet his gaze never left hope, because hope was what he had begun to call her in his mind. Preston chuckled and pushed to 1,200, clearly certain the auctioneer would drop the hammer in his favor, and the audience would cheer his easy victory. Cameron closed his eyes, remembering the rusty coffee can buried behind his neighbor's barn where he had hidden 10 single-dollar bills for emergencies, and he prayed those bills would somehow grow wings and fly here now. When he opened his eyes, his own reflection stared back from the mare's pupil, reminding him that courage sometimes looks like a tired face refusing to bend. The auctioneer prepared to call sold, his gavel lifted high like thunder about to strike, but an unexpected volley of thunder boomed outside, shaking glass panes and startling the fancy horses waiting in the wings. Gasps rose as chandeliers rattled, and many bidders lowered their paddles, suddenly worried about storms and muddy roads that might soil their shining limousines before dinner. In that brief confusion, Cameron found breath and shouted 1,300, voice ringing through marble and crystal as clearly as a church bell in a silent valley. The gavel dropped before Preston regrouped, and the auctioneer declared the mare sold to Paddle 311, his tone thick with surprise that clung to every word like syrup. For a heartbeat, the crowd sat frozen, unsure whether to clap or laugh, so they chose laughter, because mocking felt safer than applauding a miracle that threatened their neat belief in wealth supremacy. Cameron stepped forward, accepted the receipt with hands that trembled not from fear, but from relief, and the mare nickered softly as though reassuring him that money was only one kind of courage. Preston stood, clapping slowly, eyes cold as polished steel, promising that a bigger game had just begun, and he intended to win whatever future round appeared. Reporters rushed to capture the unlikely purchase, flashes popping like firecrackers while Cameron's simple denim reflected none of the light, yet seemed somehow brighter than sequins under flashbulbs. An announcer over the loudspeaker reminded guests of a charity exhibition race scheduled for dawn next day, inviting new owners to showcase their purchases, and the idea hit Preston like a golden ticket. He swaggered toward Cameron, proposed a friendly wager. If Hope could finish the short track without stumbling, Preston would donate $10,000 to any rescue ranch Cameron named, but if she failed, Cameron must clean Preston's stables for a month. Laughter erupted, and servers almost dropped silver trays. But Cameron accepted because pride measured in sweat never frightened a man raised around honest dirt. The auction resumed, yet murmur followed Cameron out of the ring, half amazement, half pity, like wind whistling through cracked barn boards on a winter night. He met the elderly stable hand outside and signed transfer papers, each stroke of the pen feeling like planting seeds in soil that rich men had called barren. The stable hand revealed the mare had been trained gently but suffered neglect after her original owner fell ill, leaving her with scars more emotional than physical, yet no less deep. Cameron whispered that scars make maps to stronger places, and the stable hand smiled, saying he wished the world held more buyers who saw horses the way Cameron did. As sunlight faded, Cameron led Hope to the quiet corner of the paddock reserved for lower-priced lots, passing rows of gleaming trailers that looked like rolling castles. He carried a borrowed blanket and spread it across fresh straw, whispering simple stories of Wyoming's sunsets and sweet clover fields, so Hope would know she had come home even on unfamiliar ground. Hope lowered her head to graze, her ribs faint beneath the coat, yet her tail swished with contentment, and Cameron's heart swelled bigger than any ballroom he had walked through that day. Behind the fence, a pair of teenage grooms snickered, betting Hope would scratch at every jump tomorrow and send Cameron flying like loose hay in a windstorm. Cameron pretended not to hear, instead brushing tangles from Hope's mane while the sky blossomed with violet clouds that looked like soft bruises healing in twilight. He spoke of early morning practice, gentle stretches, and the promise of fresh apples after the race, and the mare's ears tilted, capturing every word like lullabies. Night birds began to sing, and distant laughter drifted from the mansion's glowing windows where diners toasted fortunes. Cameron smiled because his fortune grazed peacefully beside him. He rested his head against the mare's neck, feeling her steady heartbeat thrum like a drum reminding warriors to be brave when dawn's challenge arrives. Stars finally pricked the sky, a million small witnesses shining over the unlikely pair, and Cameron closed his eyes knowing that tomorrow's game would not be about money or pride but about proving kindness moves faster than cruelty when given room to run. The first slice of dawn painted Rosewood's training field in gentle pink and gold, and Cameron awoke on a wooden bench outside the paddock with straw in his hair and hope in his chest. While guests still slept beneath silk sheets embroidered with monograms, he carried 2 heavy buckets of fresh water, each sloshing like little inland seas, and set them near Hope, who greeted him with a soft, eager whicker. He produced 3 crisp apples saved from last night's buffet leftovers, polishing them on his sleeve until they shone like red lanterns before letting Hope crunch them with grateful teeth that snapped echoes into the quiet morning. Cameron stretched stiff muscles, then traced his fingertips along each of Hope's legs, checking for tenderness the way a kind teacher checks homework, correcting errors with patient care and encouraging whispers. The mare allowed every examination, breathing slow and even, her sides rising like gentle hills under early sun, proving her calm soul matched Cameron's steady hands and steady faith. Across the grass, stable boys warmed elite horses on silent treadmills, a sight that looked more like a spaceship hangar than any barn Cameron knew. Cameron led Hope through simple circles instead, trusting the living earth beneath her hooves to whisper the rhythm she would need when the track curved fast and fierce in front of cheering strangers. He used baling twine to mend a frayed rein, humming an old ranch song whose melody swung wide like open gates, and the tune floated over morning mist as free as birdsong drifting across prairies. A curious reporter appeared, notebook ready, asking why Cameron risked humiliation, and Cameron replied that rescuing one life beats winning 10 trophies made of glittering emptiness that gathered dust on fireplace mantles. The reporter scribbled quickly, perhaps sensing that readers loved an underdog more than polished perfection, and his smile hinted that today's headline might change hearts in places too distant for Cameron to imagine. Meanwhile, Preston's team arrived in matching jackets embroidered with the sprawling crest of Monroe's stables, their footfalls synchronized like drumbeats of approaching thunder against the manicured stone walkway. They unloaded a towering black stallion named Night Emperor, whose glossy coat mirrored sunrise and whose muscles rippled like rolling storms, making onlookers gasp with admiration even as he stamped impatiently. Preston, sipping espresso from a golden cup, lifted one eyebrow toward Cameron, offering a wordless reminder of the gulf between silver spoons and metal lunch pails that echo at every social gate. Cameron tipped his hat, then adjusted Hope's simple bridle, tightening the strap one hole so it would neither pinch nor slip when speed demanded trust. A race steward approached with entry forms, surprised to see a rescue mare on the list, but Cameron's neat handwriting under the owner column left no room for debate or disqualification. The steward warned the track included 2 hurdle jumps and a water splash added for show, elements that often rattled inexperienced horses like marbles in a glass jar rolling on wooden floors. Cameron thanked him, saying practice would begin immediately, and he guided Hope toward the practice arena where colored poles lay scattered like fallen rainbow sticks after a giant's birthday party. At first, Hope balked at the bright poles, ears flicking like uncertain flags, but Cameron soothed her, reminding that fear is only a doorway to courage waiting beyond. She sniffed the nearest hurdle, then stepped over, discovering it felt no different from stepping across a quiet creek back on a forgotten farm lane lined with willow trees. Encouraged, Cameron raised the pole one setting and asked again. Hope cleared the small jump with surprising grace, landing light as cotton drifting on fresh wind through meadow grass. By the third attempt, she tucked her knees and soared, mane lifting like silver smoke, and Cameron laughed aloud because joy sometimes hides inside tiny victories that bloom under patient care and steady practice. Spectators began gathering near the rail, drawn by the sight of perseverance shaping skill, their morning coffee cooling as they forgot to sip while hearts warmed like bread in an oven. Among them, the elderly stable hand nodded, whispering to a groom that talent travels strange roads but always reaches daylight if guided by patience instead of force or arrogance. Preston's trainer scoffed, boasting that Night Emperor practiced hurdles carved from marble, yet Cameron noted how the stallion's eyes rolled white under every flash of a nearby camera lens. An announcer thanked participants and said the charity race would start in 1 hour, proceed helping animal shelters across the county. Hearing this, Cameron patted Hope's neck and told her they rode not just for themselves, but for every creature waiting behind wire fences for a second chance and a soft voice. He sprinkled a pinch of herbs from his grandmother into Hope's water, a mix said to soothe muscles and calm spirit. The mare drank deeply, ears flicking in rhythm with each swallow, as though acknowledging the blessing of generations past flowing through simple leaves and patient hearts now intertwined. Clouds drifted overhead, shaped like giant shields, casting broad shadows that marched across the field in silent procession, and Cameron felt as if unseen guardians had arrived to cheer. He stepped back, studying Hope's stance, ears forward, feet square, eyes bright, an answer to every doubt cast since yesterday's gavel. A volunteer handed Cameron a plain white armband bearing the number 7, and he smiled because 7 had always been his mother's favorite, the day she believed miracles liked to visit ordinary kitchens. He pinned the band around his arm, snug but not tight, a badge carrying more meaning than any golden cup. Hope stamped once, as if signaling readiness, and Cameron guided her toward the track entrance, passing Night Emperor whose nostrils flared with restless fire and ruling impatience. Preston leaned on the rail, restating the wager and adding that if Cameron lost, he must wear Monroe colors during his month of labor. Cameron accepted without pause, saying a man should wear any color proudly so long as his heart remains his own, and that answer drew a few surprised nods from onlookers who understood courage. The grandstand filled, satin dresses rustling while gentlemen polished binoculars reflecting their lofty expectations. Vendors rolled carts stacked with hot cocoa and sugary pastries, yet children pointed excitedly not at treats, but at the gray mare standing calm beside the shiny black giant breathing steam. A boy in a wheelchair whispered that he rooted for the gentle horse because her eyes looked like stories where everyone finds a happy ending, and Cameron's throat tightened around new resolve. Somewhere a bell rang 3 times, calling riders to the starting gates, and the crowd's buzz rose like bees stirred from sleep, quick and eager to witness drama unfold. Cameron swung into the saddle with practiced ease, feeling Hope's back respond like a tuned drum echoing across hills, and together they stepped toward the starting line where fate waited with an open stopwatch full of possibilities. The starting gates loomed like iron jaws beneath rows of fluttering banners, each banner emblazoned with corporate logos that glittered beneath fresh sunlight now climbing fast in a clear sky. Cameron guided Hope into Gate 7, whispering soft words about rivers and valleys she had never seen but might yet, words colored with sunrise gold that painted calm pictures only a horse could fully hear and keep secret. On either side, massive thoroughbreds shifted restlessly, metal shoes clinking against steel floor plates, their riders adjusting designer goggles, straightening silk ties, while photographers zoomed lenses for front-page glory shots destined for breakfast headlines. Night Emperor towered beside them in Gate 8, nostrils flaring and hoofs pawing as though he wished to start before any bell, impatience turning his muscles into coiled springs. Preston perched on the stallion's sleek back, his tailored jacket sparkling with tiny gemstones that caught sunbeams like blue fireworks, and he flashed a practiced smile toward the grandstand cameras to ensure every angle captured his confidence. A hush spread as the announcer counted down from 10, his voice magnified through speakers until it felt like rolling thunder drumming directly against every chest in the arena and silencing even the rustle of programs. Cameron inhaled slowly, remembering his father's lesson that the first breath of work should always be deep enough to hold courage for the whole job that follows. The bell rang, gates slammed open, and a wave of pounding hooves surged forward in a unified roar, dust billowing behind like smoke from a fired cannon that signaled the start of both race and legend. Horses shot down the straightaway, banners flapping wildly, and cheers exploded from grandstands where spectators rose to their feet, hats flying off in thrilling chaos. Hope burst forward with an unexpected sprint, ears pinned, legs stretching long and true. Her earlier timid energy replaced by fierce determination awakened overnight in the quiet shelter of trust and apple-sweet dreams. Cameron leaned low, keeping reins light, guiding her line just inside the rail where footing remained firm and shadowed, a trick he learned from watching prairie deer avoid soft sand. Ahead waited the first hurdle, painted red and white, standing tall as a garden fence yet looming like a castle wall when approached at speed by hearts untested in crowded din and metallic echo. Night Emperor reached it first, gathering himself in a thunderous coil, clearing the jump with showy height that drew oohs from children and approving nods from judges holding clipboards. Hope approached next, and Cameron gave a barely audible cue. The mare tucked neatly, clearing the bar with smooth economy that wasted no energy, yet looked like poetry in midair. Landing true, she accelerated, hooves finding fresh rhythm that matched Cameron's racing heartbeat, and together they swallowed ground like a single creature sewn from two spirits bound by mutual respect rather than leather straps. Behind them, fancy geldings snorted, some skimming jump poles with hind hooves that clacked with loudly, rattling nerves of riders unaccustomed to any public imperfection tarnishing their polished reputations. The track curved left, banking slightly, and sun glare flashed off helmet visors, but Cameron focused on Hope's ears which twitched like compass needles guiding through noise. As they rounded the bend, a sudden gust carried distant thunder from storm clouds brewing beyond hills, the same omen that had shifted auctions last night. Night Emperor shied at the sound, momentarily breaking stride. Preston cursed under breath, yanking reins, and the stallion tossed his head, forcing a wider arc. Hope, unfazed, slipped inside the vacated space, her smaller frame gliding like river water around big, jagged rocks during spring melt. The crowd gasped to see a gray rescue mare surge ahead of pedigreed royalty, and binoculars pivoted so fast straps swung, reporters scrambling to adjust angles as the narrative changed mid-sentence from certain triumph to possible upset. Cameron's lips curved into a brief smile, but he remained vigilant, knowing the second hurdle and the splash pool beyond could still unravel any fragile lead. Approaching hurdle 2, wind whipped dust into swirling pockets, fancy horses threw heads, eyes blinking, while Hope flattened ears and trusted Cameron's steady seat. She jumped true, clearing the bar and landing square. A chestnut behind clipped the pole, crashing through and sending splinters that scattered like confetti of doubt across the manicured turf. Cameron heard but did not look back, for the water splash now glimmered ahead, a wide shallow pool designed to test boldness with cold surprise. Night Emperor regained stride, charging up on their flank, steam puffing from nostrils like locomotive smoke, Preston's spur flicking silver sparks in bright sun. Both horses hit the water together, but while Night Emperor lunged high, landing with a grand splash that drenched rider and front legs alike, Hope chose a flatter trajectory, barely skimming the mirrored surface and escaping sticky mud. Her hooves sent only ripples, so she accelerated out while Night Emperor's hooves sank into mud stirred by his own showy entrance, costing one vital second. The final stretch gleamed ahead, flags snapping overhead, and crowd noise swelled into a roaring river of voices that could drown thought if Ryder let it. Cameron loosened the reins, letting Hope lengthen stride, and she answered with a burst of speed drawn from reserves no doubter believed she possessed. Preston urged Night Emperor, eyes wild, but the stallion's earlier missteps lingered in his mind, making each stride carry a seed of hesitation that grew with every cheer for the mare. Hoofbeats hammered like giant drums, echoing across banners. Time seemed to slow, each breath visible, dust motes floating like golden snow beneath morning sun. Cameron counted strides, 1, 2, 3, then urged one last push, promising apples and fresh grass after victory, and Hope's surge ahead. The finish pole rushed closer, its shadow stretching like a reaching hand. Even skeptics held breath, hearts colliding with ribs as moment balanced on razor edge of possibility. Hope's nose crossed first, a single gray heartbeat ahead of Night Emperor's black muzzle. Timers clicked, scoreboard lights flashed, and the stands erupted in astonishment. Cameron sat back, easing Hope to a trot, patting her damp neck, while Preston wheeled Night Emperor around in disbelief, searching for an excuse painted on dusty ground. Judges conferred, reviewed photo finish, then announced official results. Hope entry number 7, first place by 0.03 of a second, a margin as thin as a whispered prayer. Camera flashes burst like starlight trapped in noon, and reporters swarmed Cameron and Hope, notebooks waving, questions flapping like startled pigeons. Above the chaos, the announcer reminded everyone of Preston's wager, and a cheer went up demanding double donations, louder than any royal anthem sung at Rosewood before. Preston, cheeks flushed, raised a reluctant hand in acknowledgement, while Cameron lifted his paddle receipt high, proving sometimes the poorest bid buys the richest victory ever recorded on that gold-rimmed field. Cheers still shook the grandstand when Preston marched toward the official's booth, checkbook in hand, every step heavy with pride forced to kneel under promise kept. Flashbulbs fired as he scrawled $20,000, double the pledge, onto a single sheet, the ink swirling like storm clouds trapped on paper that would soon reach rescue shelters. The announcer read the donation aloud through crackling speakers, and the grandstand erupted again, some clapping for charity, others for dramatic justice, but all aware they had witnessed something unexpectedly rare and deeply real. Cameron led Hope toward the winner's circle, her coat shimmering with fresh sweat and flecks of gold dust kicked up by triumph. Yet her eyes remained gentle as creek water under summer sun. A young volunteer draped a garland of wildflowers over Hope's neck, choosing daisies and bluebells gathered from edges of the estate instead of traditional roses, believing simple blooms better suited humble grace. Hope sniffed the petals, then nibbled one, much to the delight of children pressed against the rail, who giggled at a champion eating her trophy. Reporters surged, questions overlapping like ocean waves crashing against cliffs, but Cameron answered slowly, explaining that kindness and patience were the true secrets, simple lessons learned from weathered barns and long sunsets on lonely ranges. Someone asked if he would sell Hope now that her value had skyrocketed, and murmurs flickered through listening ears like sparks searching for dry grass. Cameron shook his head, saying value measured in dollars fades, but value measured in trust grows, and Hope lowered her head close, sealing the statement with quiet devotion. A hush fell, deeper than any hush money could buy, and one by one wealthy spectators felt something subtle shift, a small crack opening in walls built of shiny coins and long-polished pride. The elderly stable hand stepped forward, holding a simple leather halter he had polished overnight, and he offered it as a gift, eyes shining wetter than morning dew. Cameron accepted, placing the old halter over his shoulder like a badge of respect, promising to visit the man's grandchildren and share Hope's story to inspire gentle spirits everywhere. A representative from Rosewood Estate approached, inviting Cameron to stay for the evening gala as guest of honor, yet Cameron glanced at his dusty boots and politely declined, needing quieter roads. Instead, he asked if unused food from the gala could be boxed for nearby shelters, and the chef, moved by the unexpected request, ordered white-coated staff to prepare dozens of meals before sunset bells. Preston, who had remained silent, finally approached, removing his gemstone jacket and offering it to Cameron as partial apology. Cameron thanked him but suggested auctioning the jacket for more rescue funds. Preston laughed, genuine and lighter than before, agreeing it was better for the jacket to feed horses than hang untouched in a closet of pride. Together they announced a second fundraiser, an annual underdog challenge where rescue horses could compete under bright lights each spring, with entry fees from elite owners matched dollar for dollar in direct donations. The idea struck like sunlight through stained glass, scattering colorful possibilities onto minds once dim, and many guests pledged support before leaving the track. Hope munched hay from a canvas bag while Cameron discussed logistics with event planners whose clipboards now filled with scribbles more exciting than profit forecasts. A television crew requested a live interview, so Cameron stood before cameras, hat in hand, explaining that every living being carries a hidden story waiting for someone to listen. Viewers watching live feeds at home paused breakfasts, some wiping tears, others Googling local shelters, and across the region, small acts of generosity sprouted like seeds kissed by sudden rain and ready sunshine. As afternoon shadows lengthened, Cameron walked Hope to a quiet pond at the far edge of Rosewood, letting her drink cool water while his thoughts drifted like lazy dragonflies. He found a weathered bench beneath a willow, sat, and wrote a letter to his mother describing everything, folding it neatly to mail from the next town post office. In the letter, he admitted nerves, laughter he endured, and the thunder that changed tides, but mostly he wrote about Hope's steady heart and how believing in someone can rewrite destinies. He sealed the letter, slid it into his jacket, and watched clouds march across blue fields overhead, each cloud reminding him of long rides still ahead. Nearby, estate workers packed temporary fences, stacking rails while unconsciously humming the ranch tune Cameron had sung earlier. The melody seemed to ripple outward, threading strangers into a single, surprisingly harmonious choir. The boy in the wheelchair from earlier rolled up with his parents, asking shyly to pet Hope. Cameron lifted him gently into the saddle despite dust still on boots, and the mare stood perfectly still, ears flicking with soft understanding. The boy's smile lit brighter than camera flashes, and his parents' gratitude wrapped Cameron in warmth deeper than any speech of thanks. From across the lawn, Preston watched, wiping dust from his trousers, looking smaller without glittering jacket, perhaps seeing life beyond trophies for the first time. Evening gathered deep purple on the horizon and lanterns flickered on when organizers announced results of a silent auction for Preston's jewel jacket. A staggering $15,000 pledged to the same shelter as before, enough to fill many haylofts. Fireflies flickered along hedges, tiny lanterns heralding night, and music floated from the mansion where chandeliers began to glow. Yet Cameron remained by the paddock, fitting Hope's new halter. He whispered that tomorrow they would head home, not in a glittering limo, but in a rattling borrowed trailer hauled by a farmer friend. Still, every bumpy mile would feel like Victory Road stretching into dawn. Hope snorted softly, as if agreeing, and nudged his pocket where remaining apple slices waited, reminding Cameron that triumph tastes better when shared. He laughed, fed her, and reflected on how one humble bid had changed countless fates, proving a single act of earnest faith can echo farther than any stadium cheer or viral headline. Moonrise painted silver on water, and distant owls called, their haunting notes weaving with faint gala music into a lullaby that swept across the estate. Cameron leaned against the fence, feeling post-race fatigue settle into muscles. Yet inside he felt taller, buoyed by invisible winds of newfound purpose. A journalist approached quietly, asking the secret to courage, and Cameron said it is simply deciding fear will not sit in the saddle alone. The journalist nodded, scribbling the quote, realizing simplicity often cuts deeper than complex speeches crafted by publicists. Stars bloomed overhead, and Cameron traced constellations while Hope dozed, thinking perhaps those stars had watched every small soul waiting for kindness since time began. He promised the silent sky that he would keep riding this trail of empathy wherever it led, for laughter aimed at the poor had been answered by a chorus of better songs leading straight into tomorrow. Dawn broke 1 week later over Red Willow Ranch, Cameron's modest spread of rolling pastures, wind-bent fences, and weathered cedar barns, painting everything rose and amber like the luminous first page of a brand-new book waiting for ink. A borrowed trailer rattled up the gravel drive, springs creaking a tired song, and when the ramp dropped, Hope stepped onto familiar soil, sniffing prairie winds that carried scents of sage, wild clover, sun-warmed dust, and distant summer thunder. Cameron followed, unloading fresh alfalfa bales donated by farm neighbors who had read the newspaper story, each bale tied with a ribbon and a note, eager to welcome the gray heroine with sweet green gifts. In the still morning, he walked Hope around her new paddock, sturdy fences mended with his own splintered hands, showing her the Silver Creek, the cluster of cottonwood shade trees, and the enormous sky stretching forever like an unfurled map. She flicked her tail, trotted a circle, and kicked up glittering dew, as though planting flags that claimed the land not for riches but for second chances. Back at the farmhouse, Cameron's mother waited on the porch swing, tears shining as she pressed the crinkled letter he sent against her heart, amazed that a son's dreams had galloped farther than stamps, planes, and even prayers could measure. She hugged him tight, saying his father would have been proud, and Cameron felt the weight of that sentence settle warm and sure across shoulders still sore from travel. Over breakfast of fluffy pancakes drizzled with prairie honey, they spoke about Preston's surprise visit planned for next month, bringing architects from the city to design a new rescue barn funded entirely by auction donations and future hope runs. Cameron sipped coffee, marveling how a man once wrapped in gemstones now wrapped himself in purpose stitched for humility and hope. Words spread quickly, riding telephone wires and social feeds, and by noon curious kids arrived on bicycles, bells ringing, camera phones ready, asking if they could meet the famous gray mare who outran million-dollar thunder and cold skepticism. Cameron organized a gentle tour through the barn aisle, teaching children how to approach a horse. Palm flat, voice calm, eyes kind, and Hope greeted each child with a soft nicker and warm breath that fluttered bangs and sparked joyful squeals. Laughter echoed off barn walls, weaving with birdsong into music no brass quartet could rival, because it carried the wild truth of open hearts. That afternoon, a delivery truck painted sky blue arrived, unloading pallets of feed, medical supplies, and gleaming grooming tools donated by companies that previously targeted only high-gloss stables gleaming under arena spotlights. Cameron signed receipts, shaking driver's hand, realizing business could also follow conscience when shown a brighter path. The local mayor drove out in an aging pickup, dusty shoes trading carpeted office halls for pasture grass, offering Cameron an official partnership to create county programs pairing troubled teens with rescue horses for riding therapy and vocational training. Cameron agreed, seeing possibilities bloom like sunflowers following light, and he pictured Hope guiding teenagers through fear the same way she trusted him through thunder and water. Across fields, rust-red windmills turned, creaking rhythms older than any marble auction house, reminding everyone that real progress often rides quietly on simple revolutions powered by steady wind and patient engineering. Evening settled, and Cameron led Hope to a small hill overlooking the ranch. They stood together watching sun dip behind distant mesa, lighting clouds with molten gold. He promised to expand fences, build bigger barns, and rescue forgotten horses until every stall proved worth lives beyond pedigrees. Hope bobbed her head as if agreeing, mane catching last sunbeams, turning strands into living strands of silver thread. The first star appeared, winking like a conspirator, and Cameron remembered how that same star guided wagon trains and dreamers long before fancy yachts crisscrossed oceans. Far off, coyotes sang with crickets. The ranch felt enormous and intimate at once, a violin carved from earth and sky. Cameron rested a hand on Hope's neck, feeling heartbeat that once echoed through a crowded auction now thumping free under limitless heavens. He reflected on the laughter that tried to crush him, realizing each cruel giggle had been a stepping stone leading right here, to this quiet summit beyond ridicule's reach. A truck engine climbed the driveway. Preston arrived unannounced, dust coating his bumper, dressed in jeans and plain boots, holding 2 dented shovels and a steel cooler of lemonade, ready to work without cameras. Cameron waved him over, no resentment left, because their race had already proven even rivals can become teammates when common good invites unity. For hours they dug post holes side by side, soil flying, sweat dripping, stories flowing, while a barn owl watched like a silent judge. When the final post stood firm, Preston raised his shovel like a victory flag, and both men laughed, not at each other, but with each other, releasing old pride into star-dusted air. They drank lemonade, sour and sweet, as moon climbed higher and Hope grazed nearby, her calm silhouette anchoring the moment in gentle reality. Preston revealed he had registered the Hope Run as a yearly event, with proceeds supporting rural rescues worldwide. Cameron's eyes shone, and he clasped Preston's hand, seeing scars of reins and office pens alike, proof people carry different tools yet can build the same bridge. By lantern light, they planted a wooden sign, Second Chance Acres, home of the Hope Run. As they hammered final nails, distant thunder rolled again, but this time nobody felt worry. They embraced the sound as nature's drums celebrating beginnings. Lightning flashed, illuminating fields where fireflies danced fearless beneath towering clouds, and summer rain began to fall in warm silver sheets, gentle and sweet-smelling as clean starts after dusty journeys. Cameron and Preston stood drenched, laughing, while Hope trotted through rain, kicking spray like diamonds, embodying freedom purchased not with gold but with unwavering belief. In that storm, a new promise took root. Every year, rain or shine, riders of humble heart would gather for the Hope Run, proving laughter at poverty never outruns kindness once it finds strong legs on open tracks. News outlets captured first photos of Hope beneath summer rainbows arching over the ranch, And those images traveled farther than any paparazzi snapshot of jeweled jackets. Letters poured in from children, inmates, veterans, and lonely elders, all thanking Cameron for proving that one simple person can tilt the world by several brave degrees when guided by compassion and unwavering follow-through. Cameron spent nights reading each message aloud to Hope, voice steady, candlelight flickering, and she seemed to listen, ears twitching at names she would never meet yet somehow help. Under that candle glow, Cameron etched a sentence onto the barn door. Worth is the road between fear and faith. And as the flame died, he knew neither thunder nor mocking laughter could erase those words or the journey that wrote them.